The crystal wine glass rings out 3 sharp notes as my father taps it with the edge of his dinner knife. The sound cuts through the low murmur of Thanksgiving conversation like a blade through silk. I watch the candlelight dance across his face as he stands, and something in my stomach tightens the way it always does when he commands a room. My younger brother, Colton, is smirking into his cranberry sauce. My mother's hands are folded too neatly in her lap. The air in our Boston dining room smells like roasted turkey and sage, but underneath it I catch the faint scent of something else. Something I've smelled my whole life but could never quite name. Tonight, I will finally learn what it is. It is the smell of a trap being sprung. I want to make an announcement, my father says, and his lawyer voice is on, the one he uses in courtrooms to convince juries that black is white. As most of you know, Colton graduated from Cornell last month with his MBA, top of his cohort, a Carlisle through and through. He pauses, drinking in the approving murmurs from my aunts and uncles. Then he pulls something from his jacket pocket, a small velvet pouch. He tosses it across the table, and Colton catches it with a grin that tells me he already knows exactly what's inside. My brother dumps the pouch onto his plate. 2 keys on a leather fob fall out. 1 silver, 1 brass. Colton holds them up, and the dining room erupts into applause. The deed is in your name already, my father tells him. 5 bedrooms, 4 baths, Back Bay. Happy graduation, son. $580,000. That's what a Back Bay townhouse costs. I know because I am a certified public accountant, and I have spent the last 7 years examining numbers like this for a living. I force my face into a neutral expression. I've had 27 years of practice. My father turns toward me then, and his smile doesn't reach his eyes. It never does when he looks at me. And Rowan, sweetheart, since you've decided to keep living at home while you figure out your career, I think it's time we made things official. Starting the 1st of December, you'll be contributing $1,500 a month in rent. Your mother and I have discussed it at length. It's only fair. The silence that follows is a living thing. My Aunt Bev clears her throat. My cousin Derek looks at the ceiling. My mother is staring at the tablecloth like it holds the secrets of the universe. I have been working full-time at a regional accounting firm in Cambridge since I graduated from Boston College 5 years ago. I work 60 hours a week during tax season. I have been paying the property taxes on this house for the last 3 years because my father forgot twice in a row and the city threatened a lien. I have been buying the groceries. I have been paying my mother's car insurance. And I have been quietly saving, because some part of me always knew this day would come. May I ask, I say, and my voice is remarkably steady, why my living arrangements differ so significantly from my brother's? My father's smile sharpens. Rowan, don't turn this into one of your performances. Colton has earned his future. You need to learn responsibility. This will be good for you. I set down my fork. I take a sip of water. I smile at my father the way he taught me to smile at clients who are about to be audited. Understood, I say. That night, in my childhood bedroom on the 3rd floor of a house I have been subsidizing for years, I open the safe behind my bookshelf. Inside is a manila folder I have been quietly assembling for 18 months. Inside that folder is the beginning of the end of my family as I have known it. It started 2 Christmases ago, with a Christmas card. A thick cream envelope that arrived at my office addressed in a trembling hand. I didn't recognize the return address at first, but when I opened it, I recognized the handwriting on the card inside. It belonged to my grandmother, Opal, my father's mother, the woman who used to braid my hair on Sunday afternoons, who died when I was 14 and left, according to my father, her entire estate to a church in Vermont. Except my grandmother, it turned out, had not died when I was 14. She had died 6 weeks before that Christmas card arrived. The card had been mailed by her longtime attorney, a man named Hollis Brennan, out of a small practice in Burlington. Inside was a handwritten note from my grandmother, dated 3 years before her actual death. It read, "My darling Rowan, if you are reading this, it means my final wishes have finally reached you. I am so sorry for the delay. I love you, Grandmother Opal." Tucked behind the note was a single photograph, my grandmother and me, on my 8th birthday, holding a chocolate cake between us, and a business card. Hollis Brennan, Esquire, Brennan and Associates. I sat in my office for an hour before I could pick up the phone. When I finally did, Hollis Brennan told me, in the careful way lawyers speak when they are delivering news they know will destroy someone, that my grandmother had established an educational trust for me in 2009, funded at $320,000. The trust had been designed to fund my undergraduate and graduate education, with any remaining balance to be released to me on my 25th birthday. The trustee of record, until I reached the age of 18, had been my father. After 18, the trust required my signature as well as his for any disbursement. My 25th birthday had been 2 years before that phone call. I had never received a penny. I had paid for Boston College with a combination of scholarships, federal loans, and 60-hour weeks at a campus catering company. I had $31,000 in student debt. Miss Carlisle, Hollis Brennan said, and his voice was kind. I have been trying to locate you for nearly 18 months. Your father informed me that you had moved to Europe and severed contact with the family. I only received your mother's forwarding address last month, through your grandmother's sister. I remember staring at the skyline through my office window. I remember my coffee growing cold. I remember thinking, with a strange, clinical calm, that I had just been handed a grenade, and that I had a choice to make about who would be standing near me when it went off. I asked Hollis Brennan to send me copies of every document he had, every signature, every disbursement request, every communication. He mailed me a binder 2 inches thick, overnight, and then I began, very quietly, to work. I did not confront my father. I did not tell my mother. I did not breathe a word to Colton, who was then still in his first year of his MBA program, which was being paid for, I had been told, by a combination of scholarships and a small inheritance my grandmother had left specifically for him. I said nothing to my cousins, or my aunts, or my college roommate. I got a storage unit in Somerville and began making copies of every document in my father's home office. I did it on weekends when he was at his golf club. I photographed bank statements. I copied tax returns. I made duplicates of the ledgers he kept on his desktop computer, which he had helpfully given me the password to 3 years earlier when he wanted me to print out something for him and couldn't be bothered to do it himself. I matched the trust disbursements against his personal expenses. I traced the money, $320,000, plus an additional $47,000 in accumulated interest, had flowed out of my trust over a period of 9 years. The disbursements had spiked in 3 clusters. The first coincided with the down payment on a summer house in Rockport. The second coincided with Colton's private high school tuition. The third coincided with the purchase of a Range Rover that my father drove to the country club on Saturdays. My signature appeared on 7 of the disbursement forms. The last time I had physically signed any document for my father, I was 16 years old. I found the forged signatures the way a forensic accountant finds any lie. I looked for patterns and I looked for inconsistencies. The pen pressure was wrong. The slant of the R in Rowan was too upright. On one of the forms, my middle initial was written as a capital M when it has been written as a capital N since I was old enough to hold a crayon. It was sloppy work. It was the work of a man who had never in his life believed he would be caught. I photographed my own signature on 15 different original documents going back to my middle school yearbook. I consulted with a forensic handwriting analyst in Worcester, privately, using money from my own savings. She confirmed my suspicions in a 22-page report that I read 3 times in a single sitting and then locked in a bank safe deposit box. I engaged Hollis Brennan on retainer. He agreed to represent me when the time came. He told me, quietly, that my grandmother had feared exactly this, that she had tried to name her sister as trustee instead of my father, and that he had talked her out of it, convinced her that family was family, and that a Carlisle would never betray a Carlisle. My grandmother, it turned out, had also left a letter. A second letter, to be delivered to me if her original instructions were ever violated. Hollis Brennan had been holding it in a safe for 16 years. He read it to me over the phone on a Tuesday afternoon in March. My darling Rowan, if you are hearing this letter, then I was right about your father, and I am so deeply sorry. I wanted to believe he had changed. I wanted to believe that blood was thicker than greed. I was wrong. What you do now is yours to decide, but know this. The law is on your side. The truth is on your side. And I am on your side, even from wherever I am now. Take back what is yours, every penny, and do not let anyone, not your father, not your mother, not your brother, make you feel guilty for it. Love, grandmother. I cried for the first time in 18 months, sitting in my car in the parking lot of the Somerville storage facility, with a binder of forged signatures on the passenger seat next to me. Then I dried my face, and I got back to work. Which brings me back to Thanksgiving night, and the manila folder, and my childhood bedroom, and the keys to a Back Bay townhouse jingling in my brother's pocket 1 floor below. I did not confront anyone that night. I packed, instead, 2 large suitcases and a duffel, my laptop, my hard drives, my jewelry, my grandmother's photograph, and the original of her letter to me. I left behind the winter coats my mother had bought me. I left behind the childhood books. I left behind everything my father had ever given me, down to the pearl earrings he had handed me at my college graduation, which I now knew had been purchased, along with the rest of my life, with my own stolen money. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It read, "I have moved out. Do not contact me. Rent will not be an issue. Rowan." I left my house key on top of the note. I drove to a small furnished apartment in Cambridge that I had rented 6 weeks earlier under my own name, using my own money, on a lease my father knew nothing about. The first text from my mother came at 9:47 the next morning. "Rowan, what in the world? Your father is beside himself. Please come home so we can discuss this like adults." I did not reply. The first text from my brother came at 11:15. "Ro, don't be dramatic. Just pay the rent like a grown-up. Mom's freaking out." I did not reply. The first text from my father came at 2:19 in the afternoon. "Rowan, I don't know what has gotten into you, but this little performance ends now. You will come home tonight. That's an order." I blocked his number. That Monday morning, at 9 o'clock sharp, Hollis Brennan walked into the Suffolk County Superior Court and filed a civil complaint against my father for breach of fiduciary duty, conversion, and civil fraud, seeking $367,000 in actual damages, plus punitive damages, interest, and attorney's fees. At 10:30 that same morning, he walked down the hall and filed a referral with the Massachusetts Board of Bar Overseers for professional misconduct. At 11, I called the Boston office of the United States Attorney and requested a meeting. My father's process server caught him coming out of a client lunch at the Harvard Club at 1:45. I know this because my cousin Derek, the one who had stared at the ceiling at Thanksgiving dinner, texted me a photograph of it from across the street. Derek, it turned out, had spent his own childhood watching my father belittle me. He had been waiting for years for someone in the family to fight back. The next 3 months were the most surreal of my life. My mother called 18 times before she stopped calling. My father sent 4 lawyers at me in the first 2 weeks alone, each one more aggressive than the last, and each one was met by Hollis Brennan's 37 years of experience and a binder full of photographic evidence that they were, every one of them, about to be embarrassed in front of a judge. My brother left voicemails that grew increasingly desperate. One of them, I remember, accused me of trying to destroy the family for attention. Another one, 3 weeks later, asked me if I could please at least send him my share of the mortgage on the Rockport house, because my father had stopped paying it and the bank was threatening foreclosure. I did not reply to any of them. The case, by the standards of these things, moved quickly. My father's legal team tried, in the first month, to claim that my signatures were genuine and that I had simply forgotten signing the forms. When the handwriting analyst's report was entered into evidence, they pivoted. They tried to claim that my father had acted as trustee in good faith, making investments he believed would benefit me. When the bank records showed the money had gone to his own mortgage, his son's tuition, and his personal vehicles, they pivoted again. They tried, in the end, to settle. Hollis Brennan, on my instruction, declined. We went to trial in early April. I sat in the front row, behind Hollis Brennan, wearing a navy blue suit I had bought for myself with money I had earned myself. My father did not look at me once during the 3 days of testimony. My mother did not attend. My brother, I was told, watched the proceedings from the back row on the second day and left before the lunch recess. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found my father liable on all counts. They awarded me $367,000 in actual damages, $200,000 in punitive damages, and ordered him to pay all of my legal fees. The judge, in a statement that my cousin Derek later framed and sent to me as a housewarming gift, described my father's conduct as a sustained and premeditated pattern of fraud against a trusting child by the one person the law and common decency demanded should protect her. The Board of Bar Overseers reached its decision 2 months later. My father was disbarred. His ability to practice law in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was terminated permanently. The federal investigation, which had been slower, concluded the following January. My father accepted a plea deal, 2 years of supervised probation, 100 hours of community service, and full criminal restitution. He avoided prison by agreeing to cooperate with a broader investigation into a colleague he had once helped cover for. He did not avoid the front page of the Boston Globe. My parents' marriage did not survive it. My mother, to my genuine surprise, was the one who filed for divorce. She hired her own attorney, a formidable woman named Pauline Vickers who had built her career on dismantling men exactly like my father, and she walked away with the house in Newton, her own retirement account restored to a level it had not seen in 15 years. And, for reasons I still do not fully understand, the summer place in Rockport. My mother sold the Rockport house within 6 months. She wrote me a check for $70,000 out of the proceeds. The memo line read, "For the years I should have seen, I am so sorry." I did not cash it for 3 months. When I finally did, I put it straight into a nonprofit I had started with a friend, a small foundation that provided financial literacy education and legal aid to young women who suspected their trusts or inheritances had been misused. I named it after my grandmother. I sent my mother a photograph of the first plaque on the office door. She wept in her next voicemail. It was the first voicemail of hers I had listened to in over a year. My brother was harder. Holton, it turned out, had known more than he had ever admitted. He had known, from the time he was 19, that our grandmother had left me a substantial trust. He had known, by the time he was 21, that our father had been spending that trust on him. He had forged my signature on one of the later disbursement forms, in his own handwriting, in a moment of what he would later call profound moral cowardice. The handwriting analyst had caught his signature too. He had not, at the time of the trial, known that I knew. He came to my apartment in Cambridge on a Saturday morning in late June, unannounced, and stood in my doorway for a full minute before he could speak. He had lost weight. The smirk from Thanksgiving was gone. He told me that he had sold the Back Bay townhouse. He told me that he had set up a repayment plan with Hollis Brennan's office to return every dollar of our grandmother's money that had been spent on his education. He told me that he had not spoken to our father in 4 months and that he did not intend to ever again. He did not ask me to forgive him. He asked only if I would, at some point, be willing to sit across a table from him and tell him the full truth of what he had done, so that he could begin to understand the weight of it. I told him I would think about it. 6 months later, I agreed. We met at a diner in Somerville. It took 4 hours. He cried twice. I cried once. We did not leave as siblings repaired. We left as two people who had begun, very cautiously, to draw the outline of what a future relationship might someday look like. It is a beginning. It may, in time, become something more. I am not in a hurry. My father, I have not seen since the verdict. He sent a letter, once, through his disbarment attorney, expressing what he called his regrets. It was 3 paragraphs long. It did not contain the word sorry. I did not reply. He has tried, through mutual acquaintances, to request a meeting. The answer has been, and will remain, no. Some debts cannot be repaid with an apology, and some doors, once closed, were not meant to be closed halfway. I live now in a small house of my own in Medford, on a quiet street where my neighbors wave when I pull into my driveway. I run my foundation out of a second-floor office in Central Square. I have paid off my student loans. I have a garden in the back that grows tomatoes and basil, and a tangle of wildflowers my grandmother would have loved. I keep her photograph on my desk. I keep her letter in a frame on the wall beside it. People ask me, sometimes, whether I regret what I did, whether I would have let it go, if I could go back, whether family is worth more than justice. I tell them what I wish someone had told me, 20 years ago, when I was still a small girl braiding her hair on her grandmother's porch. Family is not a word that excuses theft. Family is not a permission slip. Family is a verb, and the people who will not conjugate it toward you are not owed your silence. I tell them that the greatest inheritance my grandmother left me was not the money, though I am grateful for every dollar of it. It was her handwriting on a card that found me at exactly the moment I needed it. It was her quiet, patient belief that one day I would be strong enough to take back what was mine, and I was.